Madam President, on this International Women's Day, we celebrate the remarkable social, economic, and political achievements of women around the world. But we also take stock of the barriers that continue to prevent hundreds of millions of women from contributing their talents as equal members of the human family. As in years past, this year I am again joining with Senator Susan Collins to introduce a bipartisan resolution commemorating International Women's Day and highlighting its goal of advancing the equality and empowerment of women all across the globe. And I especially appreciate Senator Collins' unwavering support in working with me on this resolution. It's been said that no nation can get ahead of it leaves half of its people behind. And in the 21st century, wherever women are respected and treated as equals, we excel, as the presiding officer knows, as legislators, as scientists, as entrepreneurs, artists, inventors, warriors, and in every other field. But the harsh reality remains that women make up some 51% of the world's population, and yet we account for an estimated 70% of those living in poverty and 2/3 of those denied even a basic education. So on this International Women's Day, we celebrate women's achievements and we rededicate ourselves to achieving an equal voice, equal participation, and equal rights for all women. And we also acknowledge that we still have much difficult work ahead of us. Research tells us that women and girls' equality can be transformational for their communities and for their entire countries. Yet in some of the poorest parts of the world, and even in some wealthier countries, women and girls continue to be held back by injustices such as child marriage, sexual and domestic violence, denial of education, and lack of access to contraception and maternal health care. In recent years, we've learned more about the intersection of so many of these issues that affect women. When girls are forced into early marriages, when women are denied contraception and have children at a very young age, this typically ends any chance to gain an education and income-earning employment. And this lack of economic influence means that women remain powerless within their families and too often within their communities. And this in turn can lead to violence against women and the denial of women's most basic human and civil rights. Now, the good news is that this same interconnectedness can work to empower women and to lift up communities. When women and girls' rights are respected, when we have access to education and family planning services, this unleashes women's ability to participate equally in the community, in the workplace, and even in the political arena. Indeed, we can now quantify so many of the positive ripple effects. For example, each additional year of education increases a woman's income by 25%. And we know that children born to educated mothers are twice as likely to survive past the age of 5. By mobilizing the talents of previously neglected half of the population in too many places, we create more stable societies and more rapid economic development. Now, for decades, the United States has been a world leader in advancing and protecting the rights of women and girls around the world, including their access to contraception and family planning. And in particular, I want to applaud the excellent work of the State Department's Global Office of Global Women's Issues. And I'm sponsoring legislation in this session to give this office permanent authorization with an ambassador leading it. However, on this International Women's Day, we must also acknowledge actions to abdicate America's leadership role in advancing women's rights. Indeed, both at home and abroad, the Trump administration has exhibited a dangerous obsession with rolling back women's reproductive rights. President Trump has promised to nominate Supreme Court justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade. He has joined in pledging to terminate funding for Planned Parenthood with some of the Republican leaders in Congress. And in one of his first official acts, the President signed an executive order reinstating and expanding the Mexico City policy, also known as the Global Gag Rule. This rule prohibits U.S. financial aid to many international organizations that offer contraception and comprehensive family planning services to women. As if reinstatement of this policy weren't bad enough, the administration's executive order dramatically expanded the policy to apply to all U.S.-funded global health programs. So not just family planning and counseling programs, but we believe that this expansion will include our HIV/AIDS program, known as PEPFAR, which has been so positive in saving so many lives in Africa. It was started by George W. Bush. We also think it will affect initiatives that fund the fights against the Ebola and Zika outbreaks, and this puts at risk 15 times more funding and millions more women and their families around the world. Now, taking together all of these actions by the new administration, I believe amount to an assault on the safety and well-being of women and girls across the globe. I've joined with Senator Susan Collins, Senator Lisa Murkowski, and 45 other senators in introducing bipartisan legislation to permanently repeal the Global Gag Rule. I believe, and it's well documented, that this is a misguided policy that ignores decades of research. We shouldn't allow extreme ideology to triumph over the urgent practical needs of women across the world. The facts make clear that when family planning services are accessible and contraceptives are affordable, rates of unplanned pregnancies and abortions go down. According to the World Health Organization, there are an estimated 225 million women in the world who would like access to family planning services. And we know that makes a difference. Here in the United States, the abortion rate has dropped to the lowest level since 1943, a success that is directly attributable to the reduced cost sharing for contraception under the Affordable Care Act. And I can attest to that because in New Hampshire, we have one of the lowest incidents of teen pregnancy in the country. Now, in January, we saw millions of women, men, and children turn out for marches in Washington, in New York, in London, Nairobi, Tokyo, in my home capital of Concord, New Hampshire, and in dozens of other cities across the country and across the world. I think we can look at that as an early celebration of International Women's Day, because what we heard from those marching was that we were marching in defense of the rights of American women, of Muslim women, of women of color, and of all women and girls across the globe. And the world heard our message loud and clear. We will not allow our reproductive rights and our human rights to be taken away. We will not allow women to be targeted for discrimination. We will not be taken backward. That was our message in January, and it is our message on this International Women's Day. We have fought long and hard for equal rights and equal treatment here in the United States. And on this day of celebration and solidarity, and we are also celebrating women here in the United States. We have many women who have taken the day off to recognize the role that women play that's so significant in our society. And many of us are wearing red to also demonstrate that. So on this day of celebration and solidarity, we are determined to go forward, to build on the progress of recent decades, and we rededicate ourselves to achieving respect, equality, and justice for every woman in every community and every country across the globe. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.